All right. Good morning, everyone. Matt Braden here from the GPAR team. Hope everyone is doing well on this Tuesday morning. Welcome to our latest edition of Coffee Talk. Before we get started with Stephanie, just a couple of reminders. One, we're going to have another Coffee Talk to round out the week on Friday morning, starting at 8:30. The guest that we will have this week will be Councilman Alan Dom. Whole lot going on in City Council as it relates to rental properties, taxes, and public safety. So the councilman will be with us there. We hope you guys will join us for that. Again, 8:30 Friday morning. And then another thing, just wanted to remind you of something that went out in email. October is Realtor Give Back Month, and we will be having, through our YPN committee, an event at MANA, which deals with food security issues. And they have a kitchen there that we will be volunteering. We're going to have a volunteer window later on in the month, October 27th. So please check your email for information about that. Hope you'll consider volunteering for that opportunity. It'd be great to get some folks together. So check out that email for all sorts of information about requirements as it relates to volunteering there at MANA and joining us for that. So with that, let's introduce Stephanie Biello. Hey, Stephanie, how's it going? Good morning.
Good morning, Matt. How are you?
Great. How's it going?
Good. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us for another Coffee Talk. I'm excited to have Bright MLS here with us today, and Rene will be talking to us on a few topics. We're going to go over teams, showing services, policy discussions at the upcoming NAR meetings in San Diego, and we're going to talk a little bit about off-market listings. But before that, I would like to introduce Rene. Good morning, Rene.
Good morning, Stephanie.
How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, happy to have you. Okay, Rene, so before we get into those topics, why don't you tell us a little bit about your position with Bright MLS and how long you've been here in that role?
Sure. Thank you for that. So I'm the Executive Vice President of Customer Advocacy here at Bright MLS. My group consists of the customer support team headed up by Kim Mingo, our accuracy and policy team headed up by Kurt Miller, on the customer engagement side for our customer success coaches, that's headed up by Anna Johnson. And we have other resources such as our broker relations director, Adam Yobes, and our association relations director, Randy. Many of you know her. She was also previously a CSC along with Adam, and we have Joy on the call. Our group focuses on supporting you, our subscribers, and Matthew, our shared members, and supporting you through accessing the MLS, all the products and services we provide, receiving your feedback, and making improvements based on what you're seeing in the system or what you want to see out of the system. We provide support to our association shareholders and our brokerages. We work very closely with brokerage owners and the office managers to support them as well. So in a nutshell, that's generally our customer advocacy group. I've been here at Bright for just over 3 months now. I came to Bright by way of NAR. I was at NAR just shy of 3 years. I was the MLS director there. So I had the opportunity to be the primary point of contact between NAR and the roughly 600 MLSs in the country, along with supporting and helping our legal team through some of the legal work, the legal challenges that the industry is faced with today. And prior to NAR, I worked for about 8 years at California Regional MLS in a number of positions there before heading over to NAR.
Wow, busy guy, busy. Okay, so let's jump into teams and talk a little bit about teams, what your thoughts are. Our industry seems to be going in that direction with teams, and they're kind of little companies within a brokerage. And how is Bright approaching that?
Yeah, and Teams has been growing in adoption, if you will, and within the industry over the last several years. We see a number of agents, brokers, and agents organizing under Teams, and so there's a growing need to properly identify and be able to track teams, not only within our system but also in public representations. Communicating who's involved, which team's involved, who's the listing agent on various listings, but also on the buy side. So what we're working on here at Bright is that we understand that there's a desire and a need to better track and provide better reporting for teams, identification, credit for transactions, and the like. So what we're working on is rolling out a product that would allow agents and with permission of the brokerage to organize teams and register the team names, team members within the Bright system. That would allow them to not only work together on assigned roles, divvying up the various team roles and listing access, but also enables teams to build their brand, provide greater team visibility and listing attribution, not just within the Bright platform, but also through IDX, syndication sites, et cetera. But we'll also be, as part of that product, we'll also have the ability to provide teams the ability to track goals and productivity, real-time management of their listings, their transactions. So long list of features that we're working on behind the Teams product, but in a nutshell, it allows organization, identification, and reporting for those that are working on Teams.
Great. Do you have any idea when that will roll out or
so
introduce?
we're I don't have the actual rollout date just yet. I met with the product team yesterday. They're adding some final tweaks. There are some teams that are in the beta phase now, so that they are currently using that product and working out through some additional features and some additional enhancements. We don't have a release date just yet, so please stay tuned for that. We'll send out communication once we have a release date to share with you all.
Can you share a couple of the features, or maybe a feature, that little tidbit?
Yeah, the one that, as a starting point, that, being on, having accuracy and policy and within my group, one of the items that I personally like is, how easy it is to go in and create a team, and provides that transparency between the team members and the broker, provides that proper, oversight and supervision of the broker. The teams will get created with broker's permission. The broker will have to approve them. You can easily go in, name your team as long as it complies with state license law, select and add your team members, and assign the various roles. And then the reporting, I've had an opportunity to preview some of the reporting and how the rankings are created, not just within the team, but also within the individual team members. Some teams might assign listing agents, and some teams, as well as buyers agents. And so it's kind of cool to see that breakdown of the activity level drill down within that team itself, and have that transparency. Those are some of the things that I like, and just the ease of use. Once you see it, I think you'll see that it's very, very user friendly.
Very cool. Well, we're anxious to see that. Very exciting. So.
Very cool.
Yeah. Okay. So showing services. So there was some talk a few months ago, prior to when you came on board, I think, about the showing services. Can you give us an update and kind of fill everybody in if they're not aware of what happened a few months ago? Sure.
So you may have heard several months ago, Zillow, which is now a brokerage, acquired Showing Time, which is one of the most popular, or one of the more popular, most adopted showing platforms within the industry. That kind of started some conversations about, ensuring that the information that you're reporting, or either reporting into or getting out of the showing platforms, that there's appropriate amount of control by the listing broker in terms of the privacy controls, but also ensuring that the information is not being misused. But also it started discussions about subscribers' ability to select the showing service that they want to work with. And the challenge that we have as an industry with showing services is that, once you use one platform, it really only helps if, there's critical mass, critical adoption of that particular platform. If you have, say, 3 platforms and various subscribers are using or are spread out across those 3 platforms, you're kind of limited on that seamless experience, or being able to click into one and knowing that you don't have to go and click into various other systems to schedule showings and access and the like. So what Bright started working with, we partnered with CR MLS and in California, and MRED in Chicago area, to create effectively a database. So under the hood, no matter what showing platform or showing service you use, the database would be one where everyone would pull from, so that you could use Showing Time or any other showing provider in the market, knowing that the information that you're putting in is ultimately fed into one database that they're all pulling from, so that you can interact with other, say Matthew's using one showing platform and Stephanie, you're using another, and Joy wants to schedule something. She just goes to the showing platform of her choice, and she doesn't need to worry about having to click into or sign up for these various platforms. That in a nutshell is what we're working on the showing services side. The Real Estate Standards Organization, or RESO, has their conference next week. So in conjunction with that, we're heading up a hackathon. We're inviting several technology partners to access what we're working on and kind of build and write to that more as a proof of concept, and to show the integration and the ability to pull data, add and pull data from one database for showing services. It's similar to what Bright is doing for listing data, right? We have our database of listing information that our various products pull from, and similar fashion here with the showing services. We're working towards one database where all those showing services plug into, and there's better oversight and privacy controls over the underlying data, while still maintaining that ability to select the vendor that you want to work with as a subscriber.
So when you talk about database, realtors are very protective of their CRMs and their data. You're talking about listings. So it's going to access the listing. So when you enter into the database, it's the listing, not all your contacts.
Correct. And more specifically, the showing information behind those listings. So you're right. This is the case today, right? Even with the showing platforms today, most of them operate based on the information that you input it either into the MLS or into that showing system itself. So they don't typically get access to your CRM, your client information, unless you put it in yourself. Many showing providers at Showing Time is an example of one where you're not required to put in your client's information. You can. There's additional features that they've built in, so that if you put me in as the buyer and my phone number, I can get text message updates or and the like. But ultimately, it's about your control and how much information you want to share, including listing information. So we don't want to expose more information than what's needed to operate that system, being mindful of privacy concerns.
Great. Okay, so I did see, I think we have a question in here. I guess it goes back to teams. So fictitious names that will be accepted by Bright. What about the state of PA laws?
A great question, Craig. So we'll have some controls, and we're programming in some controls within the team name registration module. So you wouldn't be able to register something like a LLC or corporation. We're trying to align it as closely as possible to being mindful of the various state license laws. That said, we realize that there will be likely an evolution of state license laws. Some may require the filing of a fictitious business name with state licensing. Others may not. The common thread, by the way, that we found is that most of the states within the Bright footprint require that if you're going to advertise as a team, you also have to provide the phone number or display the phone number to the brokerage. So we'll keep an eye on the various state license law requirements, make sure that we program in what we can and the controls. Ultimately, it's going to come down to brokerage supervision, making sure that the broker who's more knowledgeable and not just with state license law, but also their internal policies, they'll have an opportunity to approve or reject a team name during the registration process. So that if you do put in something that's not allowed, the broker ultimately will be able to deny that registration within the team registration module.
Yeah, because you have a pretty big footprint, so different states have different requirements for teams. Is that fair to say, or
Correct.
Are they relatively the same?
They're fairly aligned. We haven't seen any outliers just yet. It's not to say that they won't, likely go down the route of maybe requiring additional attribution or putting some additional constraints. The common thread, and Craig, this goes to your question. The one area that another common thread that we have found is that they don't want to allow, or they want to make sure that you're not giving the impression that you're a separate entity from the brokerage.
Mhm.
So if you have a fictitious, business name that makes it seem as if you're independent of your underlying brokerage, that's likely going to be a problem. If you have a team name that doesn't identify the team lead, it's, I don't know, it's some generic name that's more leaning towards sounding like an independent corporation, that's going to be an issue. Typically, what we're seeing, at least in our beta testing, is the Stephanie Biello team, or some combination of the team lead's name and identifying that it's a team or a group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, and don't hold me to this, but as of now, I mean, that's what the laws and the rules are from PA. You do have to have the team lead's name, or at least somewhere, someone's name. It can't be a group, like you said. It
Right.
has to be clear to the consumer that this is a team within the brokerage and not just separate and not part of the brokerage. So, and yeah, and is anybody, it happens today, yes, and no one is enforcing it. Well, you have to report it. So if nobody's reporting it, then yes, it continues and it goes on. It's unfortunate, but if you're not going to, you gotta report it. We're an association. We can't report. We're not an enforcement. We're an association for members providing services to a certain extent, but that's not one of them.
Right.
So, all right. So that's, the showing. I think that was a concern a few months ago. This company that took over the showing time, what was going to happen to all their contacts and their leads, but everything's relatively safe, and it's theirs. Nobody took it. So good news. Okay, so let's talk about policy decisions at the upcoming NAR meeting in our conference in San Diego. So this is a meeting, not just a conference to, grow your business, educate yourself, but there are some real policy changes or decisions that go on at these meetings, particularly with Bright. The shareholders have their meetings, and a few years ago, I guess it was a few years ago, COVID makes it seem like it was a decade ago.
Right.
The
Either a decade ago or
whole
yesterday, right?
yeah, exactly. The off-market listing, how NAR and Bright addressed that, and that policy change was made at one of these conferences. So do you have any insight on what some of the policies we'll be discussing out in San Diego will be?
Absolutely. And this is probably one of the first times in a while that there will be a number of several policy areas and discussed and voted on, and that will eventually make it their way to the MLS. Let me take a step back first before we get to that, and describe the importance of having your feedback, your voice, and adding it to the national discussion on these policy issues. Having worked for NAR, one of the areas that I supported or helped worked with was our advisory boards and the MLS Committee. And so the way that the MLS rules, as you see them today, come to be, is that the majority of them are national policies that get adopted by NAR, and NAR requires MLSs to adopt them locally. They put together model rules, and we adopt them and enforce them locally. We have the flexibility of adding or modifying local discretion items. So things that NAR doesn't address, we can address ourselves. But the vast majority of our rule set comes from national mandatory policies. And those policies are created by brokers and MLS executives that get appointed to these advisory boards and the MLS committee, and then eventually get approved by NAR's board of directors. So these meetings, if you ever have an opportunity to attend, even if you attend virtually, to listen in and get involved and understand the process and the discussion items, it would be super helpful. Most policies start with the NAR's MLS Tech and Emerging Issues Advisory Board. They meet twice per year, typically, in non-COVID world. In COVID environment, I think they're meeting a little bit more frequent than that, but typically they meet twice per year. They receive policy proposals they can come from anyone. They can come from an individual broker or agent. They can come from a corporate, franchisor representative. They can come from really any segment of the industry. They get presented to the advisory board. The advisory board debates them. Once they decide on advancing a policy proposal, they craft some language. They send it over to the Mls Committee. The Mls Committee is the one that meets at the conferences. So they meet twice per year, once in DC for the mid-year meetings, and then again in November for the annual conference. This time it'll be in San Diego. And that's where they get debated on the floor and discussed and then voted on and advanced. There's a number of items that are going to the committee in November that, while they originate as national policy, if they get approved and adopted, then they'll send over model MLS rules that will be required to adopt and enforce locally. So I want to walk through a number of those items that will be of importance to you. If you do have thoughts or opinions one way or another, a good place to start is to reach out to representatives of the advisory board or the Mls Committee, or your region representatives. If you go to caucus, these will be discussed there ahead of the board vote as well. But the point being is, if you have opinions one way or another, don't wait. Send those in. Contact NAR. You can contact Rene Galicia, who's the staff executive for the advisory board and the Mls Committee. Make your voice heard. So I'm going to run through a couple of them. The first set of policies that are going to come down relate to the initial NAR DOJ settlement agreement that was withdrawn and is no longer in place. As part of that settlement agreement, NAR had put together several proposed rules in response to areas of interest to the Department of Justice. And so NAR has decided to press forward with adopting or putting up for vote and in hopes of adopting these policies and enforcing them, or having MLSs enforce them locally. The first one is a policy that would prohibit the advertising of services as free. And the policy simply states that MLS participants and subscribers, so agents and brokers, must not represent that their services as an agent or representative to a buyer or seller in a real estate transaction are free or available at no cost to their clients. The issue here was that there was a concern that, or they wanted to prevent, any potential miscommunication, misunderstanding, or misrepresentation between agents and brokers and their clients, and that whether or not the representation was free. Now, with this policy, though, this could potentially sweep in things such as advertising a free CMA or a free BPO. That under this policy would be prohibited. And because it's a national policy, all NAR affiliated MLSs would be mandated to adopt this policy. So that's the first policy here. And again, here the underlying goal was to ensure that clients understand what they're paying for as part of the representation, but this policy is a little broader than that, and would sweep in any mention of anything that you're providing as free. So another example, if part of your business model is to offer a menu of services to your clients, say on the list side, you have a menu of services. These are the things that I'll provide at a fee, and then here's some things that I'll do for free. Just hypothetically, say you, as part of your menu of services, you offer free open houses. It's an extreme scenario, but hypothetical. But under this policy, you would no longer be able to offer that as part of your services.
Could you negotiate that? But it's negotiable if you have a contract between, a seller.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, not that anybody gives away free. I mean, like some of the services, like when you say free CMA, yeah. I mean, that's part of. So you could charge a fee for that.
Right. Now, this is about advertising those services. If you contract and you delineate what the charges are for those things, it would be okay. But under this policy, you're right. Advertising a free CMA would likely be prohibited under this policy. Gotcha. Free BPOs and the like. The next area is more of an MLS function, where there was an interest by the Department of Justice to ensure that MLSs were not allowing subscribers to filter listings based on the offer compensation and then take those filtered listings and send them out to clients. their concern there was that there were listings that were being excluded from, that were not being sent to potential buyers simply based on the amount of compensation offered. Bright had already removed this feature, so we're already ahead of the curve here, where we don't allow the filtering of listings or searching and filtering listings by compensation, so that you're looking at property information. But even in the industry, there's reporting that this feature wasn't used at all anyway. So there's really no impact here. We weren't finding that folks were filtering out listings based on compensation to send out to their clients. But that is a policy proposal that will likely get adopted here. And again, the interest there is in making sure that that your clients are receiving all the listings that they're interested in based on features, location, et cetera, not just based on compensation, the amount of cooperative compensation being offered. As part of that, this also applies on, or I'll get to that next section on in just a second. Let me skip down. There's also a number of best practices. Now, these won't be policy proposals. I won't get into those here because there's 6 of them, and we'll spend way too much time talking about those. Just know that the best practices, and this is accessible in the hub, by the way. So if you have access to the hub, there's a list of the best practices. Bright's already implemented the best practices referenced in the proposal. So we're ahead of the curve there as well. The next area is related to MLS data access and use. I'll mention it briefly because this is something that Bright's already doing, but the policy would require that an MLS provide a subscriber one data feed in accordance with their licensed authorized use. What they're addressing here is in some MLS, in some markets, MLSs were providing, say, Stephanie, you came to us and said, I'd like to put up a IDX website and also a VOW component to that. And I also want to put together AVMs to display on this product that I have on this app. And so some MLS would give you 3 different data feeds for that. This policy proposal, the goal is to say, look, we could just give you one data feed. Everything else is based on our license, data license agreement with you. So we can address that, but we'll give you one data feed because you're licensed to use them for these various uses. You can just integrate that into those respective uses. So Brad already does that. Now, the next one here will likely be the topic of a lot of discussion at the committee meeting, still related to MLS data access and use. So you've all heard the term broker back office data feed. And it's an undefined term in national policy. And so what that means is that because it's not defined and it's not part of national policy, MLSs have local discretion on how to handle that. And Bright already does this as well, where if you need a data feed, say typically your own data, or you're creating a transaction management platform or something, we'll facilitate that use. This policy would create a new area within national policy that entitles all participants to receive a broker back office data feed, except that this is an expansive data set. The way they wrote the policy, and I won't read the policy verbatim, but effectively this policy would require us to give a full data feed, a full export of all the MLS data. And they just made an amendment to require all statuses, presumably canceled, expired, every status within the MLS, including your roster information. So your contact information, which that area we typically don't send out, too easily. There should be a justification. We want to keep, tighter control on that. But this policy would mandate that we send out all roster information, all MLS data to any participant that requests it. And there is no opt-out, by the way. So you can't instruct us to not include your contact information or your listing details in this broker back office data feed. So that's one that will likely have a lot of discussion.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Who would be requesting that type of information besides the brokerage?
So this is limited to participants and subscribers being able to request this. So it would come from a local participant or subscriber. Typically, this policy And this policy went through various iterations. You may have heard terms like the LEAP policy and the NOW policy. The main proponents of this policy were typically larger brokerages that wanted to service their own agents within their companies, but also those that were putting together systems and tools like CRMs, transaction management, agent ranking tools, stuff like that. And again, this typically addresses issues with MLSs and other markets where they don't provide a broker back office data feed. They rely on what is in policy today, which is IDX, VOW, AVM usage. And because broker back office wasn't defined, they felt that a new policy was needed to enable anyone to get all the data from the MLS.
So it's subjective what you give them based on who they are. Like, I'm just thinking like mortgage companies, appraisal companies, that sort of participant.
So mortgage, well, we could have some licensed mortgage folks as participants, but this is typically related, any MLS participant or subscriber. So typically it's going to be, brokers, agents, appraisers, is who would be able to receive the data here.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the broker back office. There's a new attribution policy. So as part of IDX and VOW, a new policy proposal would require that listing firm contact information also be displayed. Today, all that's required on IDX and VOW is attribution to the listing firm or the listing brokerage. This next policy proposal would be modified to also require contact information. Now, this applies to both IDX and VOW. The distinction here is VOW typically has been the client. There's a client relationship between the displaying broker and the client accessing the VOW. This policy would now require contact information be displayed of the listing broker, even though the displaying broker might be different and they already have a client relationship. This would extend to the VOW display as well. The concern here is to ensure greater transparency and ensure that the listing broker is properly identified. This started off as an IDX proposal and then was later expanded to include VOW display as well. And contact information is not defined. So it may potentially be phone number, email address. We have to layer this on top of our previous discussion on teams because we could have a scenario where if you're on a team, you would be required to display on IDX and VOW listing brokerage, listing broker phone number, team name, team lead, team contact information. So you have quite a bit of disclosure and contact information displayed on IDX or VOW listing.
Interesting. Okay.
There's one component that has been in the industry a topic of discussion and a pain point, which is where's that attribution? Typically some websites will put it in like at the footer or not very prominently on the website, so you have to dig to identify who the listing broker is. There's an additional component of this policy proposal which says that the contact information for the listing firm must be clearly identified and displayed at least as prominently as any other contact information or lead form on the website. So hopefully that'll provide some standards and we'll start to address the prominence of that attribution.
And that would be on the IDX?
On both IDX and VOW.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then finally, there was a second meeting that occurred on the 5th of the advisory board, and they put out, I think, 2 more policy proposals. One, it requires the disclosure of buyer agent compensation. Again, this is part of the Department of Justice agreement, where this would have to be displayed on IDX and VOW, along with any MLS website. So brightmlshomes.com would need to display buyer broker compensation, and your IDX and VOW websites would also need to include that compensation display field, along with the disclaimer that states that the compensation is only, the offer compensation is only being made to MLS participants. And Oh, there was the access to seller. So non-MLS subscribers and non-association members will also get access to lockbox or to property access rather. And this is again also part of the Department of Justice, where they had an interest in ensuring that if for those agents, brokers or agents that were not members of the MLS or the association, they wanted to ensure that they were able to access listings, whether it's lockbox or something else. The policy here would, in working with your sellers, would provide for mechanism to provide access to non-MLS, non-association members. And that is a list of the upcoming policy proposals. So quite a number of items for discussion, and that would likely require some feedback from all of you.
So a non-member of the MLS could access, well, has a right to access showing instructions.
So great question. They don't have the ability to access. So if you're not a member of the MLS, you don't have access to showing instructions because those are typically within the MLS listing itself, or a showing service linked to that. So that it would require a non-member to contact the listing broker directly, ascertain whether or not the seller is authorizing non-members to access the property and how that access is provided, whether it's through lockbox, whether it's through meeting someone at the properry. So that would still come down to between the listing broker and the seller on how they want to manage access.
Okay.
So again, here, if there's anything, I know I covered quite a bit and I didn't dive too deep into most of these, but if there's anything you have a question on or want to provide some feedback, please feel free to reach out to NAR. Rodney Gancho is the staff exec there. That would be the best person to route you to the appropriate either advisory board or the committee member, or you can go to the hub and post your feedback in. They have an MLS open forum in the hub. They also have an advisory board or the committee. You can connect with the folks there and provide your feedback. These items will be voted on. There's a strong sense that most of them will pass. And so you'll eventually see them as a local rule here at Bright early next year.
All right, so I threw this topic out here. I wanted to talk a little bit about off-market listings. And I don't know if there's still confusion out there, but can you tell me what is required for Bright to have an off-market or pocket listing?
Yeah, so great question. Let me start first by kind of framing what off-market or pocket listing is, right? As a subscriber, when you take a listing, a contract, you're required to submit that listing to Bright within 3 business days. That's the general rule. Typically, the industry has added the term of pocket listing or off-market listing to those listings that violate that rule. You've entered into a listing contract. You've represented to the seller that you will undertake efforts to sell their property. You will report that listing to the service, to Bright MLS. But for whatever reason, you don't do that. You keep it, and the term, right? Traditionally, you kept it in your vest pocket or your pocket and didn't tell anyone about it. So that's a pocket listing or an off-market listing, basically something that's not shared cooperatively with other participants. So in order to, so that said, there is a legitimate way to be responsive to a seller's privacy or safety concerns and create a off MLS listing, and that's an office exclusive. The office exclusive policy was put together many years ago to address sellers' privacy or safety concerns, because the general rule is once you take a listing, you have to deliver it to the service. This exception allows you to receive an instruction from the seller that says, hey, I have a privacy or safety concern. Please don't share my listing in the MLS because I know it's wide distribution. And so the seller would sign a certification or an instruction to create an office exclusive. And you would still need to report that to the service, to the MLS. In our case, you would file the office exclusive form, and then you could keep that within the office. Now, as you all know, many years ago, there was an issue identified that some brokers were doing that, but they were effectively treating it as a business practice. They were getting the seller to sign this office exclusive form, but then they were still undertaking public marketing, indicating that there is no public privacy or safety concern, right? It would follow that if there is a privacy or safety concern, public marketing would negate that interest. And that's what the clear cooperation policy was intended to address and addresses, the misuse of office exclusives. So a pocket listing can have a legitimate use case when there's a seller instruction, or in other words, an office exclusive listing, where there's a seller instruction to create an off MLS listing. But it comes with the understanding, and we recently published the findings of a study where it comes with that understanding that listings that that aren't shared cooperatively within the MLS typically sell for just shy of 17% less than listings that come through the MLS. And even office exclusive listings or pocket listings, those typically sell in 20 days longer or more time than listings that come into the MLS. The vast majority of office exclusives end up coming on the MLS at some point. They just take longer to sell, and they still end up selling for less money than coming onto the service. It's not to say, by the way, that that study says that, it's always about selling for the most money or selling for a faster amount of time. It's going to come down to a seller's interest. Some sellers might say, yeah, it's more important to me to sell faster than sell for top dollar. Others might say it's more important to me to sell for top dollar than time. And there might be a combination of all the above. So long answer to say, there's a right way to do an off MLS listing, and there's a wrong way to do an off MLS listing.
Okay. So, I mean, I have this quite often. A client wants to list the house, but it has nothing to do with not compensating or, any agent bringing, their buyer. They don't want it public. And I know you can check off not having it, but it still goes public. And I think that is the hesitation with, I don't want to say putting it on MLS or submitting it to MLS, but they really, really don't want it on public. And we have an issue with Bright, checking that box off, and it's still going to these public outlets. And that's what they do not want, because these sellers legitimately, they could be, executives or presidents of corporations in a community that could have an economic effect if somebody found out that this house was, going up for sale, or his house, her house, whoever. And so we're almost forced to not put it in the Bright MLS, because even though you check it off, it still goes out to those public sites. So what's your advice there for those type of clients? And for the agents who are trying to service their client, doing what they wish. And it's not illegal what they're asking for. So
yeah, so great question. And it's a great opportunity to highlight that the MLS is not an all or nothing proposition. The MLS is a couple things. First, at its core, the MLS is a broker cooperative. If I was a broker and a participant, Stephanie, our contract between us or of sorts would be, hey, we agree to come. And this is how the MLSs came together over 100 years ago, right? We all agree to come together and share listing information within the broker cooperative for the benefit of consumers, so that we can help properties get sold, both for sellers and buyers, right? Secondarily, the MLS is a technology platform or a gateway to the internet, to the world. So in policy today, you have the ability to provide kind of that sliding scale of publicity to the listing. If you have a sensitive transaction where, hey, I'm okay sharing it with the broker cooperative, with other subscribers, but not the internet, you can input that listing to the service. And if you select internet no, it will not be distributed to the internet. So IDX, VOW syndication sites. It only stays within the Bright MLS cooperative platform to other subscribers to see. So that's one layer. You have to be careful though within your brokerages, because if say you take a listing that says, okay, we have some privacy safety concerns, but we're not adverse to sharing it with Bright's nearly 100,000 subscribers because we know it'll sell for faster and more money, and we can control publicity. But if through your brokerage you hire, say you want to put together a virtual tour, make sure that you're working with your vendors, because some vendors in the fine print, I haven't seen it too much lately, but there were some companies that when they come out and create a virtual tour for you, as part of your service agreement, you were agreeing to have them syndicate your listing publicly. So check with your service providers, make sure that they understand the type of transaction you're dealing with. Check your terms of service and what you're signing up for, so that you don't create a syndication or leak somewhere through a service provider. But within the Bright platform, if you've selected no internet display, we will not send it out to anyone that you don't want it to go out to. In other words, no one outside of the broker cooperative. It has to be supported by seller's instruction, though. You want to be careful and make sure that you're not making these decisions on your own, that you have written seller instructions saying, and in fact, it's a policy at the national level and then a local rule here, where you have to get their instruction to not send it out to the internet. And that includes brokers' own websites, right? If the seller says, don't send it out to the internet, that's also broker's website, right? They don't want it on the internet. So we have ability to provide anywhere from an office exclusive or support an office exclusive to no internet display to full internet display and distribution.
What if like a FSBO or somebody who says, oh, I'm thinking about selling my house. If you can sell it, great. I just want like limited services, like just put it on your website. And you signed a contract and it says limited services only on office website.
Yeah, so great question. So with that example, right? So that it's no longer for sale by owner. Now it's a listed property. As a subscriber, when you join Bright MLS, you agree to abide by the rules, which is when you take a listing, you agree to share cooperatively within the MLS. So as part of that agreement or that responsibility is you have to have that discussion with your client, whether it's in limited service or otherwise, and explain, I'm a member of Bright MLS, I'm a subscriber, and I agree to abide by these rules because they're, and you look at the rules, they're designed with the consumer in mind. These are the rules that I agree to follow. So when I take your listing, I have to report it to the MLS. If you have a privacy or safety concern, we have the office exclusive policy. If you don't want wide distribution, you can opt out of internet display. And so walking through with them the various responsibilities that you have as a subscriber will hopefully help you get there and educate them. If they want it just on your website, then it sounds like there aren't any privacy or safety concerns. And so distribution on your website is, on the internet is a lot broader than distribution within the Bright broker cooperative. But also keeping in mind and having that discussion with those clients that this is also a fair housing issue. Consumers should be able to select the property in the neighborhoods they want to live in based on their choice, not based on limitations on what listings they're allowed to see or what listings they're allowed to know about. So we have to think about the broader consumer community and ensuring that they too have access to as much listing information as possible. And again, that's part of the reason the MLSs were started over 100 years ago, to ensure that wide distribution of listing information and not siloing listing information to a select few.
Okay. All right. So I'm not sure if this is a Rene or a Joy question. So one way an agent could help their client, let's say, we have the coming soon, but let's say it's longer. Like, let's say you have a conversation with the client today, we're in October and they want to prepare for spring. You have a contract with them, you're not going to market it until then, but you want to drum up can you put it on as temporarily off the market? Can you, because coming soon is only so many days, it's not going to get you into. So you have this contract with a client that you're going to list it in the spring, but then you want to stay in compliance and get it into. So how do you talk to that agent?
Yeah, so I would ask a couple more questions in that scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're signing the contract today, why not, if there's nothing that's going to occur right now, right? In other words, the seller can't sell it right now. They don't want advertising or marketing. They in fact, they can't sell right now. I would ask, is there an issue with maybe signing today, but making the start of that listing contract down the road when they're ready? That would be one approach. And then part of what you have to balance is your fiduciary duty to the seller, right? If you're signing a listing contract today, you're agreeing to undertake efforts to get that property sold. But if you're unable to undertake efforts to get that property sold, why not start the listing contract a little further down the road? But if there's a need to actually go ahead and list it today, even though you can't, and then by the way, part of that fiduciary duty, right? If you have that property for sale and you receive an offer, you have to present it. You're obligated to present it to the seller. And so can the seller accept an offer? And so having these discussions with the seller at, higher up earlier on, and if the answer is, yes, I can accept an offer, well, cool. Maybe we going down the coming soon status, maybe going to active if there's a specific period of time that they're concerned about. Maybe you can go to temp off market during that period of time. We got the holidays coming up, right? And a lot of folks don't want to entertain showings and inspections and everything else through the holidays. And if there's that specific window of time, identify that. You could go to temp off market during a week or two that you need to not have showings or not entertain that transaction. So I would ask more questions and have that discussion with the sellers. There's a range of options and tools available at your disposal on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm experiencing is true. Holidays, they don't want to have it listed during the holidays. They're prepping for the spring. They want to get some work done around the house, and they're having issues finding people to do the work. Finding, I mean, that's a backlog. Could they list it today? Yeah, they can't get their roof done until next May. So. Do they want to sell it now, or do they want to sell it? Our job is to help them get the highest price for their property. And if it means getting some improvements done, well, now they're they're like 5 months out. And, this is part of what we do for our clients. We do have those contracts. Could we sell it in between? Yeah. I mean, like the people that I talk to, I could say, hey, you know what, we have something coming on, it needs a roof, but they want to get it done. And I'm just using this as an example.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's definitely, and I see this in here from Joy, delayed entry versus office exclusive. So great place to go to. So yeah, it's an issue getting work done, in some of these houses.
And it's a reality of the marketplace, right? And my whole point with my comments is that there isn't just there isn't a you're either in or you're out proposition within the MLS. The rules provide enough flexibility. It's about working together and understanding that on the one hand you have a duty to your client, on the other you've agreed to be part of this broker community, this cooperative community of working together to get homes sold. And you're absolutely right. There's no one size fits all for every client. One client might say, I have to get this roof done and I have to get this, basement remodel finished. But on the other side of that, there might be a buyer that says, don't do any of that. I'm looking for something I want to come in and customize. I'll give you an offer now. I'll do the roof. I'll do the basement remodel. I'm a cash buyer. Let me customize the home. I have a different vision. So no one size fits all solution. But at the end of the day, if as you're working through this, even if you're at you're having early discussions with the client, you're not sure how to navigate the rules, call us, send us an email, connect with Joy, connect with any Bright MLS resource. We'll walk you through and make sure that we keep you in compliance with the rules, but also more importantly, keep you within the broker cooperative of working with each other to get those properties sold.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand the policy. It's unfortunate that it has to be there because it wasn't, it's making those who truly need it. Somebody saw a loophole and took advantage of it, and then it just kind of ruined it for everybody. So
yeah, Stephanie, you bring up a great point, right? And I keep saying you, but I'm speaking to the subscriber community. But Stephanie, you bring up a good point, and maybe that's a brighter line of distinction. And I keep saying you, but for those of you attending or for those of you speak with, if the decision comes down to making a business practice or a competitive advantage over, I'm going to keep it off the MLS, or I'm going to create a pocket listing. If that's the consideration versus this is what my client is asking, or this is the end goal, let's figure out how to meet my representation to the seller, but also keep in line within the rules or keep in compliance with the rules. maybe that's a easier distinction to make, right? If it's a business practice, never mind the MLS rules, you might have some license lock issues, right? Or concerns. But if you're truly working on finding a solution for the seller, call us. We'll work with you. We'll figure it out. We'll help you. We're here to support all of you. So we want to help you, be able to meet the goals of the seller. We don't want to stand in the way of that. So we'll figure out, where to best categorize your listing.
Yeah. And then on the other end of that are the agents who truly do have buyers that are looking for properties. And because they have made this a business practice, they don't have access to that, although they do somehow find out about it and then they're upset. So how do you deal with that? Like, and it goes back to, an agent reporting, like we're like reporting one another. So it's an uncomfortable position, but then again, it's not right. So
yeah, it's one of the biggest benefits of this industry is that we're largely a self-regulating industry. Sure, we have the Department of Justice goes off the rails sometimes, and they've always had an interest in our industry, and it goes back for years and years. But largely, we're a self-regulating industry. Accuracy of listing information, self-regulating, right? There's some things that we can do at the staff level. The vast majority of what we do on the rules side is process reports from subscribers, and we do that anonymously, by the way. So if you do see an issue, report it to us. We're not gonna, I'm not gonna tell Joy, hey, Stephanie reported you for this issue. We handle it all anonymously. We develop our own investigative processes once we receive your information. Think of it as a tip, right? You give us a tip that something is off. We'll run it down. If it does violate the rules, we'll get it corrected. Ultimately, our goal is to ensure that you all have access to accurate, timely information for listings, because we know that you're providing that to clients, to consumers, both sellers and buyers. So that's our goal. And work with us, we'll work with you. And by self-regulating, we hopefully keep regular, state and national regulators at bay, and you see some of that today with the Department of Justice being involved. But yeah, report issues. We're here to get them fixed for you.
Well, I've always suspected Joy. She's sneaky. Only kidding. I love Joy. She's wonderful. She's great.
Yeah.
All right, so we are at our hour. We actually kind of went over a little bit. I hope I got everyone's questions. Matt, did I miss anything, or we're good?
I think we need a few more hours to review everything. Joy put into the chat. Thank you, Joy. Chock full of information there. Very helpful stuff. And also, too, Joy has some upcoming classes. As on the 19th is one, and then there's going to be more coming in November and December. So make sure you keep an eye on those upcoming educational opportunities for you to improve your skills, your tools, and your resources to be better at your job. So I think with that, we're all done. Rene, Stephanie, great job. Thanks for the conversation. Thanks for everybody for chiming in with your different questions and points and whatnot. Remember, Friday, 8:30, our next coffee talk. We hope to see you there. Until then, everyone have a great day. Take care. See you soon. Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye. Thank you.